Hello everyone and welcome to every episode of South Park, Season 3 Reviewed. South Park's been in the news quite a lot lately, with Season 27 now airing, mainly because of the Donald Trump hullabaloo, and I'll get to Season 27 eventually, but for now I'm still on the good old early days of this show. The first two seasons have been good, not great from a reviewing perspective, so let's see if this season continues or improves on that. It is worth noting that during this season, production was also going on with the bigger, longer and uncut movie. Now, for anyone who's interested, I have also reviewed that film a while back, so I'll leave a link to that video in the description because it is an important piece of South Park history. With that bit of housekeeping done, I'll dive right into the episodes, starting with Episode 1, Rainforest Forest. An activist group visits the school. After the boys make fun of them, Mr. Mackey forces them to go on a trip to a rainforest in Costa Rica. So my trivia about this one is that most of the choir kids had designs which would return in the future, as recurring background characters mainly seen at the school. My best moment was Cartman's disgusted reaction to the streets of Costa Rica. The season opener gets a 3 out of 5. So yes, an outrageously named environmental activist choir group, getting gay with kids, visits the school. The boys find their presentation boring, but after they take the piss out of it, Mr. Mackey makes them sign up to actually go and experience a rainforest in Costa Rica. The group is led by Miss Stevens, who is voiced by Jennifer Aniston, and portrayed as a typical hippie do-gooder. The only other character worth noting is Kelly, the girl Kenny falls for. She's kind of frustrating how she clearly likes him, but refuses to hang out with him because they will never be able to see each other again after the trip. She does redeem herself in the end though, when she resuscitates him after he dies. I like how she is the only one who doesn't treat his death as normal, and actually tries to save him. The scenes where they first get to Costa Rica meeting the government officials were fairly uneventful, but I did like Cartman bad-mouthing the country so brutally. Obviously he has no filter, but a lot of what he said does fall into the sad but true category. The rest of the episode is basically trashing the rainforest every step of the way. They get lost because a snake kills their guide, all the animals are out to kill them, and so are the local tribes people. In fact, it's even implied they are about to rape Miss Stevens. Eric Cartman runs off from the group and discovers a bunch of helpful American guys who are cutting down trees. They save the group by killing all the people and animals who cause them trouble in the episode with their bulldozers. Miss Stevens, who now hates the rainforest, is delighted, and the episode ends with the group singing a song about how much the rainforest sucks. I have mixed feelings on the moral. On one hand, I agree with the criticism of certain frauds who do not really care about the rainforest or the environment, but champion the cause to look good. Also, the government and indeed many activists and charities are hypocrites on the issue for sure, so I take all this on board. On the other hand though, the rainforest is actually, needed, so I can't support overzealously chopping it down. And also yes, while the things about the rainforest shown here may be true, and most pampered Western people would not like it there, why should they like it? That ecosystem and the people that live there, even including the tribes which live by themselves, out of the way of what we consider civilized humanity, it all operates in its own way, which is to some extent in harmony with nature. Why should it have to cater to Western tourists? It seems from the episode's commentary like Trey Parker got salty that he had a bad holiday in Costa Rica and aired his grievances in this episode. I'm not going to criticize that. Some of the charm of South Park is being able to have the creators' uncensored opinions on things, but this was one of the more unnuanced takes they have ever given for sure. Episode 2, Spontaneous Combustion. When citizens of South Park start randomly exploding, the mayor enlists Stan's dad to find a solution to the problem. So the statue made for Randy, which he later has to carry like a cross, is a take on Michelangelo's The Statue of David. My best moment here was Cartman being left on the cross for 3 weeks. You can see what was left of him right there. This one gets a 4 out of 5. This was the first real time Randy has a starring role, so it's significant for that alone. It showcases some of his important character traits, like his pompousness and tendency to overreact. Although he was competent enough to figure out that people holding in farts was the reason for them exploding, so he gets some credit for that. The whole bit about the extra farts now creating some warming problem was a bit ridiculous, of course, but at least the message of moderation made sense. That applies to anything really. The religious symbolism throughout was okay. It was made funny by Cartman's pissed off reaction to being hung on the cross. All because the boys mistook resurrection for erection, which they wanted to give to Kyle's dad. But hey, Cartman did want to be Jesus, so it's his own fault. His fat keeping him alive for 3 whole weeks, with the image of his malnourished body, was again just absurd humour. I guess that's proof that he's not big boned after all. The jokes were for the most part good. The news guy going, "Randy's an asshole, I hate him and so do you," combined with Whoopi Goldberg at an awards show going, "Republicans are stupid, I hate Republicans," are both great jabs at the media and the entertainment industry trying to tell you what to think. There were a few jokes ran a bit into the ground though, like Randy's flashback about the town praising him, and the exchanges with the mayor. Or else what, exactly. Still a positive episode though. Episode 3, the Succubus. The boys notice that Chef has a new woman, who has changed him for the worse. They soon discover that this woman is in fact a demonic succubus. My trivia is that the receptionist mistakes Cartman for the little boy from the 1996 film Jerry Maguire. And best moment overall was, of course, Chef's parents' story, or stories I suppose, about the Loch Ness Monster. This one gets a 4 out of 5. This kicks off in a fairly weird way. Chef has quit his job and is replaced at the cafeteria by the incredibly goofy Mr. Derp. The boys are not happy with this arrangement and try anything to get their friend, their mentor, back. Their passion for helping Chef really drives this episode and is just nice to see. Chef's relationship with Veronica did seem fishy from the start, and the scene where she reveals that she was a succubus was quite freaky. Turns out Mr. Garrison was actually right all along. Maybe they should go to him for advice more often. They predictably defeat the succubus just before Chef gets married and send the thing back to the pits of hell. Chef is grateful for the kids, in what ends up being a reasonably happy ending by this show's standards. This was an enjoyable episode with its weird supernatural elements, juxtaposed with some subtle satire about relationships. Sure, there was a subplot with Cartman getting glasses, which never added a lot. In a newer season he would have done something horrible to that eye doctor for calling him fat all the time. It doesn't take away from the meat of this episode though. And to be honest, what really makes this episode memorable is Chef's parents. It's so funny, all their nonsense stories. I need about 350. The bit about not noticing the Girl Scout was a giant monster was too much. I wish the couple the best of luck in trying to avoid that pesky Nessie in the future. If only Mrs. Chef would stop giving it money. Episode 4, Jackophosaurs. The boys discover a believed to be extinct creature called a Jackophosaur. However, it gets on everyone's nerves, so they try to find a way to get rid of it. This is actually the last episode until Cupid Ye in season 26 to have Matt Stone as director. My best moment was the farcical rigged quiz game show. This one gets a 1 out of 5. As the boys are out camping, with Cartman working on his harmonica song routine, he stumbles upon a weird yellow creature, so the boys take it to Jimbo and Ned's, where they trap it in a cage. Eventually, the mayor and even some bigger government officials get involved trying to figure out what to do with this creature. Soon they find a male version and he tells them his species is called Jackophosaurs. Not at all a subtle pun. Anyway, the entire town except Cartman gets worn out by this thing and its goddamn voice. It's so annoying. Unfortunately, it's not just annoying for the characters, it's one of them which is annoying for the audience too. I know this was kind of the point. It's meant to be a parody of unpopular characters, like Jar Jar Binks. But this doesn't work if most of the episode devolves into annoying screeching. It takes you out of whatever story there is, and just makes you want to be done with it. Even stuff unrelated to that thing weren't great. Cartman wanting him to stay felt a bit underdeveloped. Like, why does he care? Also, the running gag of Ned losing his voice box fell about as flat as his burps. The only decent moment was how they had to outright give the Jakov the win, because even Bar Brady was crushing him in the quiz. All as an excuse to ship him off to Paris. But it's still not enough to save this from a 1. Such an annoying, frustrating episode to watch. Episode 5. Tweak vs Craig. The boys instigate a fight between Tweak and Craig in shop class. Meanwhile, Mr. Adler is haunted by a recurring dream of his lost love. My trivia is a parody of Gonna Fly Now. The theme song from the 1976 film Rocky plays as the kids walk towards the pole. My best moment was Mr. Adler reconsidering, going balls first into the saw machine. What am I thinking? That would have hurt like hell. This one gets a 3 out of 5. This episode obviously had a lot of ramifications for the distant future of the show. The Craig and Tweak pairing got some real steam in the fandom, but here, honestly, I was a bit uninspired by it. The two boys never had any animosity towards each other, it was all forced upon them, and the final fight they had felt a bit anticlimactic. Also at this point, all we know about Craig is that he likes to flip the bird, so there wasn't much to work with from a character perspective. This episode is also the debut of the rather unimportant shop class teacher. He's not that interesting generally, he just likes to say, "Stop screwing around." However, we do get some memories from him, which show he is going through some real emotional baggage. There are some weird live action flashbacks to him losing his fiancée in a plane crash. It's so out of place for this show to try this, but the absurdity of it kind of works. Not only a cartoon character having a real life girlfriend, but also the crash itself, where the plane explodes and falls into the sea, only for her to somehow survive, then be drowning in what looks like a pool. At least he is finally able to move on, when a vision of his deceased lover is able to comfort him, even if Kenny had to die to make it happen. What else was there? I guess the bits in Home Ec, with Kenny and the girls, was also decent. How it's all about prepping the girls to be good housewives, and giving themselves the best chance to marry a wealthy man. Then they wouldn't have to work at all, they'd just fool around and have a ball. Maybe a less true stereotype nowadays, but still some funny satire regardless. Episode 6. Sexual harassment, Panda. After sexual harassment, Panda educates the children. Cartman sues Stan for sexual harassment, and a flurry of other lawsuits follow. This is in fact the first episode to air after South Park Bigger, Longer and Uncut. The best thing about this episode for me was the misfit mascots. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. A very middling type of episode this. Even Matt and Trey admit it was a filler episode. They were so jaded from working on the movie, they claim they can't even remember making this. Still, despite being silly, the sexual harassment Panda has managed to carve out a bit of a niche position in South Park lore. It's not the most famous character or anything, but when people talk about it, it's usually looked back on fondly, and I see why. It's silly fun, honestly, as are all the overly specific mascots on the Misfit Island. Now, Kyle's dad suing everyone produced some nice moments like his ad, and how over-the-top money crazed he got. There was some satire in that by itself, I suppose, about greedy lawyers. But the lawsuits were so over-the-top, with huge amounts of money being paid out over such frivolous claims, that it was hard to take seriously. I know that was partly the point, but still, nothing too much was said about these false sexual harassment claims either way. My favourite satirical bit here was actually the more subtle throwaway line from Gerald about how these restrictions on what we can say and do are not fascism because we don't call it fascism. I think most agree there does need to be some laws and regulations on how we act, unless you want to live under total anarchy. However, the definitions are often arbitrary, and there is a fine line between justifiable restrictions on freedom and fascist control, and if you give the people in power an inch, history shows they will take a mile, which is one main reason why I tend to err on the pro-freedom side, even if in some cases it carries more risk. But hey, that's just me reading far too much into an episode about a guy in a panda suit. We don't take kindly to guys in panda suits around here. That was a repetitive but funny gag for what it's worth. Episode 7, Cat Orgy. While all the adults are gathering at Mr. Mackey's house to watch a meteor shower, Shelley Marsh is left to babysit Cartman. My trivia for this one is Cartman was watching the 1986 film Aliens and keeps quoting, "They mostly come out at night." Mostly, that's where the running gag of this episode comes from. My best moment was, I suppose, the ending. This one gets a 2 out of 5. This is the first part of the Meteor Shower trilogy. 3 episodes which show what different residents of the town were doing on that same night. This time the focus is on Cartman and Shelley. This whole dynamic is very weird. Shelley mistreating Eric is to be expected, but she also had her 22-year-old boyfriend over when she's like 12. Skylar is his name, and he's just a scumbag. Well, he's more than that, he's a literal paedophile, isn't he? Trying to kiss Shelley and go even further than that. Yikes. For a character like that to work, they have to be somehow funny with it. Like Herbert or Family Guy, for example. He gets away with it because it's so over the top and funny. Skylar isn't though. He's just portrayed as this typical loser with a crap band. In the end though, Shelley and Eric work together to get back at him by breaking his guitar and getting all the cats to mob him. Cartman's cat was in heat, by the way. That's the subplot this title refers to. It wasn't great. It mostly amounted to the cat showing its backside to the camera. I can't imagine many people were into that, to be honest. At least the ending was decent. Eric's mum returns home, so he and Shelley immediately go back to blaming each other for the state of the house, only for her to pass out on the couch. So they both end up getting away with it anyway. Overall though, this was both uneventful and off-putting. I really hope the next 2 parts of the trilogy are better. Let's find out with Episode 8, 2 guys naked in a hot tub. Stan's parents drag him along to Mr. Mackey's meteor shower party, where he has to hang out with the nerdy kids. Also, Randy and Gerald share an interesting moment in the hot tub. My trivia for this one is the Cher song they play to scare the party guests is a parody of her 1998 chart topper Believe. My best moment here was the government's paranoia about the supposed cult. This one gets a 3 out of 5. This is one of the more awkward episodes, but it is surprisingly introspective at the same time. Gerald and Randy decide to experiment while they are alone in the hot tub by masturbating in front of each other. We don't actually see that, of course, but what follows it is somewhat interesting. Randy feels uneasy about it, like his masculinity is now threatened because people might think he's gay, whereas Gerald awkwardly follows him around the party wanting to talk about it. Of course, all these feelings are understandable, but to be honest, Randy, jacking off in front of another guy is a gay thing to do. But as the others say, isn't everyone just a little gay? On some level they probably are. The South Park townsfolk are, anyway. The side plot was also okay. Stan has to hang out with these so-called Melvins, nerds like Pip, Butters and Dougie. Yes, this is the first major appearance of Butters on the show, so that's something going for this episode by itself. It was clever for Stan to use their games to bust him out the basement, and get Dougie to report that the party was not actually some suicide cult. It was kind of nice that he warmed up to them in the end, even if he went back to dissing them when Kyle turned up. The funniest thing here for me was the overzealous government guys, quite happy to shoot innocent people coming out the house. Funny, but equally, the satire of them using incompetence to cover up their evil intentions is sadly very accurate. Episode 9, Jubilee. Kyle invites Kenny to join him and Ike at Jubilee, a camp for Jewish kids. My trivia is that the appearance of Moses is based on the Master Control program from the 1982 film Tron, and my best moment here was Moses. Not just his appearance, but also his voice, and just everything about how bizarre he is. This one gets a 3 out of 5. This is on the lower end of a 3, and it's a slightly mediocre end to this mediocre trilogy. I just didn't get into the Jewish camp stuff. None of the Jewish characters were interesting, much less funny. Even the anti-Semitic villain was lame. As I say, the main highlight was Moses himself, along with the weird subplot of the bear kidnapping Ike and the other babies. Turns out the bear just wanted friends for its cub's party though. It was even kind enough to help save the day. It was Kenny who made the ultimate sacrifice though. Even after being shunned for not being a Jew, he still headbutted the clam to free Moses, killing himself in the process. The ending message, while brief, was still good, about how it's fine to have your beliefs, but closing yourself off to others is not a healthy way to go. Episode 10, Korn's Groovy Pirate Ghost Mystery. The band Korn comes to South Park for a Halloween concert and helps solve a spooky pirate ghost mystery. So some info about this one is the argument over whether the ghosts are pirate ghosts or ghost pirates was based on an actual debate in a writer's room, and my best moment was the explanation for the pirate ghosts. I gave this one a 5 out of 5. Maybe I'm being slightly generous given this top marks, but I've always had a soft spot for this. Largely because the Scooby-Doo parody was on point, from the animation of the Korn band, to the Mystery Machine-esque van they drive, to the background music, even the little touches like the attempted trap, and niblets, scaring everyone at the end, were very true to the original show. Korn also played their part well. They came across like a slightly out of touch, yet good-natured group, just hoping to play music and solve mysteries. Just don't count on their rather useless Korn powers. There was the obvious satire of Father Maxi playing the role of the religious guy, offended by their hedonistic music, but they ultimately got to play anyway. Falling Away From Me is a killer song, so I'm not complaining. As I said, the reveal of the pirate ghosts being these elaborate projections was my favourite moment. Again, it was a take on the typical Scooby-Doo silliness. To go with the more eye-catching Korn stuff, there were numerous other little side things going on, like the boys digging up Kyle's grandma to scare the 6th graders. Although, these two annoying guys showing up all the time to explain necrophilia was overdone for what it was. What I really digged was the costume contest. I love how Kenny somehow has this cool realistic robot design, but everyone still recognises him and treats it like no big deal. Because of that, he loses the contest to Wendy's lame Chewbacca costume. Talk about getting scammed out of the win. Episode 11, Chimpokomon. Stan, Kyle, Cartman and Kenny, along with all the other kids in town, get caught up in the latest fad from Japan, Chimpokomon. My trivia here is that the phrase Chimpokomon means penis, pocket monster in Japanese. My best moment was Bill Clinton reassuring the American people. I gave this one a 5 out of 5. This wasn't just about satirising the Pokemon phenomenon that swept the world in the late 90s. The franchise had much more staying power than this episode gave it credit for. It certainly wasn't no fad. Instead, this combines the Pokemon show, toys and games, the names of which are funny by themselves by the way, with the boys' desperation to have them. Kyle always being the one left out, says something about peer pressure, and his reaction to his dad's speech about being an individual was funny and true. It is easier as a kid to just fit in, instead of being bullied for standing out. Hell, even as adults, most people choose the path of least resistance. The twist that the whole craze is a Japanese military plot to bomb Pearl Harbor is over the top, but not in a way which lessens the stakes. If anything, it amplifies them, because the parents now have to fight to get their brainwashed kids back. The way they do it makes total sense as well. Of course, if the kids think their parents like Shin Pokemon, they will drop it like a hot potato. The main running joke in this episode was also great, about how the Japanese guys sidetrack the American men by telling them they all have huge penises. Again, it's very silly, but I'm sure plenty do have such a fragile ego that they do need validation about their dick size, even if it's probably false. The joke reached its apex when Bill Clinton addressed the nation and ignored the impending bombing because the Japanese leader assured him that his penis was mammoth, dinosauric in size. He should be applauded for his honesty. This episode should also be applauded for being a funny satire on Pokemon while also being rooted in some very real character stuff. Episode 12, Hooked on Monkey Phonics. To help Cartman win the school spelling bee, his mum gives him a phonics spelling system. He and everyone else still get beat by two homeschooled kids. So the information about this one is very sad. This is the final episode Mary Kay Bergman worked on. This episode in fact aired the day before her suicide. That was such a tragedy. May her soul rest in peace. It also had unfortunate implications for the show. Since she voiced pretty much all the female characters, they had to find replacements. A couple of new voice actors were brought in, but not straight away, so they had to write the next few episodes without any female characters. On to more positive things, my favourite moment here was the Monkey Phonics spelling kit actually having a real monkey in it. I gave this one a 3 out of 5. I want to say Cartman's mum getting him this kit with a real monkey which taps the drums, along with the words, was cute. It is if you ignore all the implied dead monkeys, and the fact that it stops working to beat its meat at the most inopportune times. Still, the real story here turns out to be these pampered homeschool kids who dominate the spelling bee. Kyle falls for the daughter Rebecca, whereas the son wants to try public school. There is a lot of satire throughout regarding the differences in perspective between the parents and how the homeschool kids try to adapt among the quote-unquote normal kids, which often resulted in the kid and his dad being strapped to a table. Ultimately, Kyle succeeds in getting Rebecca to come out of her shell, only he was a bit too successful. She ends up rocking up to the school dance, caped in makeup, and starts acting quite the whore, which her brother Mark blames Kyle for, and proceeds to beat him up over, which wins over the other kids, who now consider him cool. Just as their parents turn up to take their kids back, Mark delivers a speech about the negatives of homeschooling, and says he wants to stay in public school going forward. I suppose I should give my take on this whole debate. I am probably more pro-homeschooling than this episode is. I agree that if you're going to homeschool your kids, you have to do it properly, not only with the education side, you also do need to make sure your kids don't become socially inept recluses, who will be unprepared for the real world. But nothing says kids can't still go out and play and socialise with kids their own age in their free time, right? Not every homeschooled kid fits in with the stereotype presented here. I will be honest, maybe I'm biased, because not only do I think very little of the education system in most countries, I personally hated school. I found it to be 90% a waste of my time. Most of the things learned there didn't interest me, and it was also regimented. It's all you have to do this at a certain time, you have to do this in this certain way, you have to regurgitate these answers to pass this test. You even have to think in a certain way. Now some personalities thrive under these conditions. I'm just not one which does. And although I did have a small group of friends, with respect to them, it was not enough to make my school time worthwhile. No offense guys, I'm sure none of them are watching this anyway, so it's okay. I kind of wish I was homeschooled, to be honest. Not that my parents were ever up to that, but I'm talking in some parallel universe here. Either way, I understand. It will largely depend on the individual. And the reality is that most people don't have the time/money to homeschool their kids. They have their own jobs to do. So we are stuck with the very indifferent education system we have. Just try to make the best of it, I suppose, like anything in life. Episode 13, Starving Marvin in Space. Starving Marvin returns to South Park with an alien spaceship and enlists the boys to help him seek out a new home. My trivia for this one is this is the only episode written by Kyle McCulloch, and my best moment was the Christian fundraiser getting more and more ridiculous. This one gets a 4 out of 5. Unlike the last episode, which made me think a bit, this was a much smoother watch. I just strapped in along with the boys and enjoyed the crazy ride they took me on. It was nice seeing Marvin back, and obviously he had the happy ending by taking his starving family to go live on the luscious planet Marklar. There was even some rare action scenes for the show, in the form of the space battles on the ship, between the boys, the religious guys, and Sally Struthers, who is back, looking like Jabba the Hutt. It's all very crazy, but I really like the constant cutbacks to the religious channel, trying to get people to fund their space cruiser with more and more elaborate weaponry and defense systems, all in the name of spreading the word of Christ. There were quite a few jabs at Christianity here, but it was all in good fun, nothing to take too seriously. In terms of the jokes, simply how everyone on planet Marklar only used that word over and over was quite funny by itself. It clearly isn't confusing to them, so fair play. Marvin's parents being referred to by the CIA as Mr. and Mrs. Click Click Dirk also got a laugh out of me. Episode 14, The Red Badge of Gayness. At the annual reenactment of a Civil War battle, Cartman leads the drunken Confederate rebels to defeat the Union. Then, on a destructive tour of the country, my trivia is that the alcohol sponsor, Jägermans, is a spoof of Jägermeister. My best moment here was Cartman as General Robert E. Lee. Just all of it. This one gets a 5 out of 5. This was such fun. It has all the shades of a typical South Park episode. First, Cartman gets into an argument with the other boys, and gets so carried away with trying to beat them, that he ends up going on some country-conquering shenanigans. Centering it all around the Civil War was a great idea, making the men so drunk they thought all of it was part of some reenactment, when they are literally sweeping through the country gathering more and more members, destroying towns along the way. Cartman's old-timey letters worked so well in the context of a Confederate leader, whether it be telling Stan and Kyle that he hates them so very, very much, or reporting on Kenny's death to his mum. He of course plays this type of power-hungry role so well. It's the most natural thing in the world for him. Many of the scenes of the Confederate army taking various towns and forts were funny, and they had a bit of action to them. And to top it off, the conclusion to all this actually made sense. How Stan and Kyle roleplay as Abe Lincoln and Jefferson Davis signing a treaty which calls for an end to the war. Cartman still got away with it though. Since slavery is now abolished, he legally never had to fulfill his bet with Stan and Kyle. Seems those two were not as smart as they thought they were. This is a generally very good episode carried to greatness by an iconic Cartman role. Episode 15, Mr. Hankies Christmas Classics. An extravaganza of holiday songs are performed by various South Park characters, all hosted by Mr. Hanky. My trivia for this one is that the songs in this episode, along with many others, are in the Mr. Hanky's Christmas Classics album, which came out around the same time as this episode. My best moment here was Mr. Mackey and Mr. Garrison's songs. I couldn't choose between them. I gave this episode a 3 out of 5. I am not naturally the biggest fan of musicals, but anyone who has watched the movie knows Matt and Trey can pull it off well. That being said, some of the songs here are definitely better than others. There are some I don't have anything to say about, but there are 3 or 4 great ones, which make this episode solid overall. The Dreidel song was a nice harmony, with each of the characters having their own lyrics. Courtney Cox, I love you, was my fave. Mackie's Carol of the Bells had no business being as good as it was, given it was just a straight cover of the original. His voice is just perfect for it, and it's the ding dong guy, which really tips it over the edge. Garrison's song, slagging off the beliefs of everyone who isn't a Christian, was offensive yet very funny. I love how he got progressively angrier as the song went on. The final song was also a touching tribute to Mary Kay, featuring all of her characters. So yes, overall, when this is good, it's really good, but about half this episode isn't amazing, so you know, a high 3 seems about right. Episode 16, Are You There, God? It's me, Jesus. People from all over the world start to gather outside Jesus' house, waiting for a millennium miracle, so he tries to convince God to show himself. So my trivia here is more of a mistake. It's how the stage in Las Vegas is briefly shown with the mountains background when Jesus approaches the microphone. My best moment here was Stan wasting God's one question. This one gets a 4 out of 5. The kid's naiveness was once again on full display, driven on by Cartman's intense need to feel superior, proudly announcing to his friends that he got his period. Kenny also suffered with the infection, which caused him to bleed out of his butt, whereas Kyle, feeling the peer pressure, simply lied to fit in. Stan goes through quite the turmoil all episode, being talked down to and left out by his friends, causing him to take a ton of hormones. On the face of it, his new voice and developing boobs was amusing, but deeper than that, it does say something about kids' need to fit in, even if what they're fitting in with is destructive, similar to the Chimpokemon episode in that regard. Everyone expecting something grand from Jesus for the turn of the millennium brought up some interesting moments regarding Jesus' relationship with his father, God, and how once he put his own fear and ego aside, that's when God decided to turn up to save the rather disappointing Rod Stewart concert in Las Vegas. Obviously the appearance of God here is purposefully ugly for comedic effect, but as he says, what do you expect God to look like? Why does it have to conform to what we view as aesthetically pleasing? Sadly for everyone, Stan wastes the one question, asking why he hasn't gotten his period yet, so God tells him he's a boy and can't get one, which exposes his friend's lies and stupidity. Still, everyone who saw what went down is not too happy with Stan wasting this golden opportunity to ask anything they want about life, so they go after him during the credits as he's trying to sing Auld Lang Syne. This was a solid episode, not the funniest thing ever, but had no real flaws. Episode 17, Worldwide Recorder Concert. The children of South Park go to Arkansas for the first Worldwide Recorder Concert. While there, Garrison has some business to attend to with his father. My trivia for this one is when Garrison walks out of his parents' house, he sings Put on a Happy Face by Dick Van Dyke. My best moment was the boys making everyone in the world crap their pants. The season finale gets a 4 out of 5. The main plot here was solid. The South Park school bus gets put next to a school from New York, and the boys get into a confrontation with some of the New York kids. The New Yorkers make fun of them for being rednecks, who don't know the meaning of more adult words. However, the boys develop a revenge plan of using the mysterious brown note to get them to crap themselves. However, the changed music they put on, the New Yorker's door, is mistaken for Yoko Ono changing the music again. By the time the boys realise this, it's too late, and everyone plays the note on their flute at the same time. The reaction to this is so over the top, but in a funny way, how it affected everyone in the world, and the concert field looks like a war zone. Some people, including Kenny, even crapped themselves to death. But hey, the New Yorkers now think the South Park kids are cool, so that's all that matters, right? Now onto the subplot. It's one of the most ridiculous I've ever seen. Garrison is fearful of going back to his home state of Arkansas because of a history of sexual abuse by his father. Still, Mr. Mackey, despite losing a fight to Mr. Hat, convinces him to pay his father a visit. The twist is that Garrison is traumatized because his dad never molested him as a child, thinking that it meant his dad never loved him and that he was ugly. Garrison really is one fucked up individual. If this wasn't bizarre enough though, his mum also views his dad, not molesting him, as a problem, and Mr. Mackey even pays Garrison Sr. a visit, telling him to have sex with his son. This is so messed up, yet kind of funny at the same time. He really asked if he was the only sane person on Earth. Yes mate, you are. Seemingly the only sane person in the South Park universe. Anyway, he eventually hires the musician Kenny G to do the job, so he never had to. Thankfully he did stick to his guns, but honestly, if I was him I would be rethinking my whole life, and probably divorcing my wife. This was a crazy end to the season, and I wouldn't have it any other way with this show. Okay guys, welcome to the Season 3 summary. The overall average score was 3.47, which is, for all intents and purposes, the same as Season 1, definitely better than Season 2. I dispensed with the bottom 5 list here because there were only 2 episodes worse than the 3, so it's pretty obvious what they were. My top 5 though is a bit more interesting. I had Spontaneous Combustion at 5, Worldwide Recorder Concert at 4, Korn's Groovy Pirate Ghost Mystery at 3, the Red Badge of Gayness at 2, and Chimpokomon was my favourite of the year. As I try to delve deeper into my thoughts on this season, I do think it's getting there, more like the South Park we know today, or have known over the years during the show's prime. There's still a lot of roughness to it of course, and a few of the old-timey characters are still getting a lot of screen time, like the Mayor, Jimbo and Ned. However, the parents like Randy and Gerald are starting to appear a lot more, and we even get the introduction of more kid characters like Craig, Tweak and Butters. I think this kind of told in the quality of the season too. The first half was kind of mediocre honestly, but the second half really started to feel like the series finding its form. I think once they got the movie done out of the way, it freed them up a bit, and Matt and Trey really started to see the way they wanted to progress with the series going forward. That makes me really excited to watch Season 4 and beyond, because I always kind of considered maybe Seasons 4 onwards to about Seasons 12-ish as the absolute golden era of the show, so I'll see if that holds true next time. Thank you all as always for watching, the support is very much appreciated, and thanks for the patience as I alternate this series with Family Guy. I'm almost caught up with that show though, so it'll soon be full steam ahead with this series. For now though, I'm all done. Take care everyone.